Muted.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome today to the Polling Places Voter Engagement and Community Empowerment webinar. We are so glad to have you here today. I'm Cristina Pacheco. I'm the Director of Programs for Arts for LA, and I'm joined here today by panelist Jeff Klein, who's the Manager of Community and Voter Engagement, and Jaime Young, the Assistant Division Manager, Polling Place Recruitment and Pollworker Services with the LA County Register Recorder and County Clerk's Office. So we want to welcome you to the webinar and make sure that you feel comfortable with all of the software that we have today. So on your control panel, should be about on the right side of your screen, there are a couple ways you can participate. You're welcome to ask questions using the chat box in your control panel, and we'll be monitoring those throughout the webinar. And we encourage you to ask questions as we go along, and we will answer them as we can or towards the end as well. You'll also see a couple documents that you can download in the side screen as well in the control panel. This is an overview of the ArtsVote and also some information on Pollworker training. So we encourage you to download those documents. You can view them at any point in the webinar. We want to give you a sense of what we're going to cover today, and we have a packed agenda for you. We're so glad to have you on the line today to talk about ArtsVote and what you can do to participate, and what the LA County Register Recorder and County Clerk's Office is doing to engage all of us in regional elections. So we're going to start with an overview of ArtsVote 2016. We'll also have the registrar give an overview of the work that they do and the critical role that they play for all of us. We'll do a brief history of voter turnout in LA County and some statistics around voter engagement, where we are in this current place. We'll also talk about becoming a polling station, a big part of why many of you have signed in today. And we'll also talk about poll worker training and voter registration support, which are other critical ways that you can be involved, and next steps from here, what you can do. Arts for LA is proud to launch the ArtsVote campaign in 2016. The ArtsVote campaign is a multi-strategy campaign designed to engage residents, provide opportunities for public discourse, bolster volunteerism, and provide avenues for arts organizations to show their ArtsVote power. You can find more information by going to www.artsforla.org and click on the Learn More button next to the ArtsVote section on the homepage. And this provides a whole overview of this campaign and all the ways that you can get involved. We know that LA County requires an informed, engaged, involved society able to participate in their community and in their government. Participation is so critical, and the arts is a crucial catalyst for fostering engaged residents and developing opportunities for public debate, volunteerism, and lifelong learning. So we are a powerful force, and Arts for LA is so glad to launch this ArtsVote campaign and find ways for you to get involved, whether you are a community member, an arts organization, or someone who deeply cares about your community, that you can plug in, be involved, make a difference. We are a powerful force, and we know that people who care deeply about arts and culture are often more registered to vote than other people. Our own research shows that 96% of arts advocates are registered to vote. So we want to use that power, which we do have as a base of arts and culture organizations, and use that to drive forward change. So the facets of the ArtsVote campaign include candidate surveys, which we've done since 2006. We're also going to be hosting 2 candidate forums this year happening in April. And these candidate forums will be for the County Board of Supervisors election. We are also happy to be partnering with the LA County Register Recorder's Office around a polling place initiative, registering polling places, and encouraging organizations to use their facilities for poll worker training, and we'll hear more about that throughout the webinar. And also getting informed about your nonprofit electoral rights. We have so much that we can do as nonprofit organizations, and we'll continue to share that information with you as the arts and culture field so that you can share that with your organizations, your constituents, and ultimately all of us become a stronger voter base together. We're actively working to get out the vote as well with regional partners, including the LA County Registrar and Recorder's Office, which is with us today, the League of Women Voters, United Way, and other regional partners who are promoting our surveys and also doing the great work of getting out the vote. And we're actively tracking critical elections and legislation as well that will impact the arts and culture field, and we'll share about that information as we have it. Arts organizations and art supporters do play a critical role. You are trusted spaces in the communities. You are connected to patrons and community members. You are spaces where people want to be. So as organizations and art advocates, we have an opportunity to be involved in bolstering participation in critical elections and policy making. So thank you for being with us today. And with that, I want to introduce Jeff Klein with the LA County Register Recorder County Clerk's Office, who will share more about how you can partner with the county around these critical initiatives. Please welcome Jeff.
How's everyone doing? Thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I'm happy to be here and always excited to be able to talk about ways we can improve community partnerships. I was really excited to be part of this webinar and to partner with Arts for LA. Our department is always interested in working with organizations, especially those like arts communities, which are considered, which we think of as pillars of the community, places, as Cristina mentioned, that people want to be, people want to go, and ways that we can connect with the community better. You know, to start off the conversation, I found a great quote, and I put it on this slide. I'm going to just go ahead and read it. Art is not always about pretty things. It's about who we are, what happened to us, and how our lives are affected. And I thought this was a great narrative for what we're going to talk about today. Just a little brief summary of kind of how we operate. TV community voter outreach, voter engagement. We do a lot of voter registration and other voter education approaches for the department. And this is we use what we call a partnership model. And LA County is the largest voting jurisdiction in the country. We're going to give you some statistics in a minute that just shows how big LA County really is. But it's a very large voting jurisdiction, both in numbers of people and also in size and square miles. And the only way we can really reach all the voters that we need to reach, and it's something we have to constantly work at every day, is by partnering with organizations such as yourself. And by partnering, we can do things like improve our polling places. We know that one of the reasons voters respond better to elections and turnout is higher when there's polling places that are adequate, polling places that are enjoyable, that are familiar to the community. And then also there's other things that we like to partner on, everything from improving voter registration efforts, disseminating information, and so forth. And a lot of that we're going to talk about through this presentation. So let's go on to, we'll look at some voter registration statistics. And so this is a good visual, and this is always the moment everyone kind of gasps when we show them this slide. So in LA County, we have a little over 10 million people who live here. A little over 6 million are eligible to vote. We have right now a little over 4.8 million registered voters. But of all those people, when we look back at an average of the 2012 and 2014 elections, only about 25% of people turned out. So there's a lot of work here that we all need to do, not just our department, but in partnering with the community. There's lots of ways that we can really improve these numbers, and I think it's in everyone's interest. And you know, most people agree higher turnout is something that's definitely great for our society, great for our county and our communities. So how can we make a difference on election day as an arts organization? All right, so the first thing we can do is become a polling place. We can also help train our poll workers, and we're going to talk about what that consists of. That's offering our facilities. Maybe becoming a polling place on election day doesn't work, so helping to train poll workers prior to election day is something we can do as well. And we can also promote voter registration, and we're going to give some examples and some resources later on how to make this a really easy lift for any organization interested. Okay, so one of the big questions we always get from organizations, especially those that don't normally participate in elections or around our democratic process, things like that, is this concept of nonpartisan versus partisan. And anytime you mention elections, sometimes people just are uncomfortable because immediately the word politics pops into everyone's head, and that makes people a little uneasy, especially if you're trying to maintain a nonpartisan role. So let's talk about what that is. On the left is what we would consider nonpartisan. So what that means is we serve all members of the community. We do not favor any political party. We encourage all voters to participate. And we adhere to additional policy that our department puts forward. Maybe it's not necessarily state law, but it's policy either via the county or our own internal policy, just to make sure elections run more smoothly and are more accessible to all members of the community. So we contrast that to what we consider partisan activities, something that generally focuses around political parties, and that would be you're only interested in certain community members, you favor one or more political parties, and you have to, there are rules and laws you have to adhere to, but it's mainly the California Elections Code. Some of the additional policies or best practices aren't necessarily part of that. As long as everyone on this call as an organization and as individuals sticks to the left, the bullet points on the left, we're fine. That's considered operating in a nonpartisan manner. All right, great. Okay, so some additional statistics, as I mentioned. For the upcoming June primary, as I mentioned, there's about 4.8 million. It's a little higher than that, but that's a rough estimate. We are going to need, there's about 4,621 precincts. Individual polling places may change. We have something called an NVC, which is a neighborhood voting center, and that means we might house up to 3 or 4 precincts within a location. All right, so in order to help the election run smoothly, help assist voters, make sure everyone can vote on election day, we rely on a little over 21,000 poll workers, and those are people who we consider really volunteers, although they do get a stipend, but it's a little over 21,000. And if you're interested in becoming a poll worker, my colleague Jamie will address that in a little bit. In order to train our 21,000 poll workers, or a little over 21,000, we use approximately 88 training locations, and we conduct about 200 classes, and that happens approximately 4 weeks prior to the election. All right. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jamie now that we have a frame of reference, and she's going to talk about what it means, how you can become a polling place. You can offer your facility as a polling place. Also, maybe you or any staff you might have could become poll workers. So, Jamie?
Thank you for joining us today. So before I get started, I wanted to give you a little bit of our basic jargon. When we talk about elections, we tend to talk about lots of electoral type terms like precincts and polling places and voter groups, and we have all of these different phrases. And to get you a little bit more familiar with what we're talking about, we're going to break down how we come up with a polling place. So voters are grouped together based on what they're eligible to vote for. So that might be a city council, a board of supervisors district, school districts, other special districts or state offices, and that narrows down a pool to about 1,000 voters in a precinct. So a precinct is a geographic area where voters can vote on the same thing. Each of those precincts can be small, just a few blocks in a highly populated area, or it can be much larger in areas where there's more open space. Each precinct gets a polling place, and that's where you come in. So, polling places are open from 6 o'clock in the morning till about 9:30 at night. The first hour is for the setup of the polling place, and then voters begin voting starting at 7 o'clock until 8 p.m. At 8 p.m., the polls close, and the poll workers have to put away all those supplies and materials, count up the ballots, and bring them back into us. So they close the doors typically about 9:30 in the evening. Next is that polling places must be compliant with the California Elections Code, and there's some restrictions on the types of sites we use. Most of the facilities that you have to offer us will be okay. They also must be accessible to a wide variety of voters, and that is based on some California standards that are developed by the Secretary of State's office. It's our job to determine if you're compliant. Next, the polling place needs to be about 20 feet by 20 feet at minimum. The bigger the site, the better the site for us. So the more space you have to offer us, the better off we are. Our voting equipment is sensitive, and our poll workers are there for a very long day. So we do hope that the space offered is heated and protected from the elements. And it's got to have adequate lighting. Because we start so early and we end so late, we're often starting when it's dark and leaving when it's dark. So hopefully the room and the parking area, the path of travel, has some lighting to it. We also hope that you would be able to offer our poll workers the use of your restrooms. We do not expand that to our voters, but 16 hours is a long time to try to hold it. So if you could share your restrooms, that would be really appreciated. And finally, it would be helpful for us and the poll workers if you would allow access the day prior for setting up our non-sensitive equipment. So putting up some signs, setting out the tables, setting up the empty voting booths. That really makes their morning go a lot easier and voting go more smoothly. So to become a polling place, the first thing you want to do is to contact us. You can contact myself or Harnell Harper, who oversees that unit, and our contact information will be later in this presentation. We will go ahead and schedule an appointment to come out and survey your site. We'll review those findings and review what areas that we need the polling places in for that particular election. And if you're selected, we'll contact you for some additional details and permissions, including who the emergency contact would be and who will be opening up the polling place for the poll workers on election day. So I've included some rough deadlines here. These are very rough because if you're interested, we're interested in hearing from you. Anytime, even if there's not an election going on, let us know and we'll add you to the pool of potential locations. So for the June election, we are already well into the process of selecting polling places, but it's never too late to let us know you're interested. So if you could give us a line by the end of March, and then we begin working on the general election for November, just after the June election. So the sooner you can let us know you're interested, the better off we'll be in being able to place a polling place in your facility. So you're probably curious about what types of facilities have been used as polling places. And the truth is we use a little bit of everything. Schools are one of our main staples, community centers, religious centers such as churches or temples. But we also use a number of private businesses, and they can be in all sorts of different types of locations. Car dealers, retail boutiques, salons, hotels, Goodwill. We've had them in grocery stores, a little bit of everything. So pretty much if you've got a 20 by 20 space, we're willing to talk to you. And of course, there's always that question about what's in it for you. And of course, there's the feel-good piece, the sense of the civic responsibility and the pride for doing something for your community. But for the more bottom line kind of people, it promotes your organization. It brings roughly 1,000 people from your local area into your facility, and it's great free advertising. It also creates a positive connection between the voters and the facility. Voters are really passionate about polling places. They really feel a sense of ownership to the process. It connects them to those civic feelings within themselves. And even beyond Election Day, they consider that facility to be part of their life and their community. And their participation with us in your facility may lead to their participation with you in the long run. Unfortunately, we have lots of areas where we have a very difficult time finding locations. So we've listed some of those areas that we've struggled with for this election up on the board, on the presentation. Those include all the bullet points there, some of the locations in Los Angeles. LA, downtown LA and really LA City is often a challenge for us. Some of the zip codes that might be helpful for you are 90010, 90035, 90049, 90068, and 90077 are some areas that we know that we're still looking for locations in even now. And of course, there are always areas beyond this. This was just a sampling to get you started to see that it really is all over the county. So another question that we often hear is, can staff from my location serve if you choose to be a polling place? And the answer is, if space can be made available, absolutely. The requirements for being a poll worker is that you need to be available from 6 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. You must be a citizen or a lawful permanent resident. Bilingual is highly encouraged but not required, and we have provided a list of all of the locations, all the languages that we do recruit for. The minor or the languages that are a little bit more obscure are definitely ones that we have a harder time locating. So if you have those services, the chances are we can place you easier. You earn up to about $175, and you would contact that phone number or at that website to apply. We've also attached a polling place application to this presentation. You can go ahead and click on that, download it, and return it to us.
So before we move forward, I actually have a couple questions that have come in that maybe we'll just throw in now, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
One question is, do places need to have dedicated parking in order to qualify as a polling location? So we'll start that first.
Not necessarily. It's a little bit tricky. It depends on the neighborhood and what's around. So each case really is judged on its own merit. So if there's a facility who's interested, by all means contact us and we'll look at your area and see if it'll work.
And for those organizations that are willing in both being a polling place and having employees volunteer on site to be poll workers, how does that process generally work for that organization?
Well, again, they're going to start by contacting us. If we get you early enough in the process, so for example, if we've been talking in January and we wouldn't have yet recruited any of our poll workers or polling locations. So when a facility offers themselves as a site, and it's deemed to be accessible and meet all the other requirements, then the first priority would be to try and get those polling place workers from that facility on the board. Unfortunately, for the June election, we're getting closer to the end of our recruitment process, so we have to juggle our poll workers around a little bit, but we are always trying to accommodate to make sure that the facility is, if you've got somebody, we want to try and make sure it works. And it's in our benefit to have somebody from your organization on the board because typically you trust them with the keys, which helps us to ensure that the polling place will open up on time on election day.
Great. And last question before we move forward, a question came through. As a polling location, can we provide snacks and gifts for those who drop by our center and vote? They really would like to make their site festive and attractive to voters.
I think we would need to talk about specifically what it is that you're looking to provide, and if it's kind of a case-by-case basis. So again, give us a call and we can talk about it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff now.
All right, great. Thanks, Jamie. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and talk really briefly about becoming a training location. So using facilities in the community is not just on election day. We actually, as I mentioned, have to train over 21,000 poll workers, and we do that at around 88 locations, give or take, every election. And, you know, this is something that's an alternative for facilities and organizations who feel like they want to be part of election day, they want to connect with the community, they want to do, as Jamie said, have that feel-good portion included in their activities. But maybe election day, because it is just one day out of the year, and there's a lot of other restrictions, as Jamie talked about, how you have to meet a lot of requirements. So maybe your facility doesn't work as a polling place or doesn't work because it's scheduling on election day. As I mentioned at the beginning, we start training approximately 4 weeks prior to the election, and so we spend that entire month. So in this the June election, we'll spend all of May pretty much training our poll workers. So I'm going to talk about the requirements, and if you're interested in becoming a training location, we'll give you the contact information, and then you can go ahead and help us with that. Okay, so the basic requirements. Times vary. So we're training members of the community. People work, some people don't work, but they only go out during the day. Some people are only free on weekends. And so we try to have a variety of times available at all these facilities throughout the county. Ideally, we love to get facilities that we can have from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., a training room, and we can schedule a number of classes throughout the day at that training location. Sometimes facilities say, well, you can have it only from 9 till 3, or you can only have it on the weekend, or whatever the case is, and that's fine. We're happy to talk about that and see if that might work for us. And so we try to be a little bit flexible because we understand that you're doing us a service and helping us out to try to accommodate our training needs. What we generally look for is a meeting room that fits about 150 people. We need chairs as well because the classes will run 2 to 2.5 hours in length. So we would like our poll workers to be able to sit down during the class. We don't need table desks or anything for the participants. It's more of a classroom style seating. Also, because poll workers are going to be coming from all over to attend training classes, we don't want to have them paying for parking. So we ask that either free parking is available or parking can be waived. Or if you're a facility where you know there's tons and tons of street parking and that it should not be a problem if 100 people come out for a class, you can let us know that as well. This is something we can always talk about and see if it works for us as well. We have all types of poll workers. Some poll workers arrive in wheelchairs. Also, some poll workers might have service animals. So we want, even though it does not need to meet a lot of the requirements of maybe a polling place in terms of accessibility, we would like it to be fairly accessible as far as people with wheelchairs, as I mentioned, service animals and things like that. Adequate lighting is necessary. It's a classroom environment, so we want to make sure that people are going to be able to there'll be enough lighting there where everyone will be able to be comfortable in the class. We need approximately 5 tables. This is just for our own trainers to use. We set up some displays at the front of the class, and we also have what we call breakout groups where some tables are used for that. So we don't need a lot of tables, just 5. It can be those really long tables. It can be small tables. We usually make do with what's available. Because we use so many training locations, we do look for facilities that are low or no cost. Obviously, low means different things to different people. So if you feel like you want to offer your facility, you can't offer it at no cost, but you feel like there'll be a minimal charge, please let us know, and we can talk about that as well. And then also overall, just when you're thinking about your training, the room you would have in mind, it has to be conducive for teaching. We've seen a lot of rooms where there's maybe pillars all through the room and it makes following a PowerPoint in front of the class. It makes it a little difficult. Our trainers are amazing and they make do with a lot of environments and a lot of different rooms, and we realize that because of the numbers that we need, we're not going to always get the most ideal location. So, but it's important to keep that in mind, and this is also important where you might have 2 different rooms you're thinking about. You might have one that's a little better for a classroom style event. All right. So just to give you some examples of what's been used as training locations in the past, religious centers, churches, temples, and so forth. Gymnasiums we've used, community centers, fraternal organizations. There's a variety of locations. We're not, as long as there's a room available to us and has all those other requirements, we're generally pretty good about most facilities. Unlike polling place locations, we generally don't use retail businesses just because it doesn't really work out that well. But if you know of one or you have connections to one and you actually know that they have a big meeting room that might work for us, we're happy to talk to them. Also, just to talk a little bit about what benefit there is for becoming a training location, it's similar to becoming a polling place. It serves members of your own community. You get that feel-good connection, and individuals who go to those training locations definitely remember in a positive way your organization and the facility they went to. It allows us to have well-trained poll workers. As we know, one of the main reasons why people are discouraged from voting in the future is if they have a bad experience on election day. And as most of us are aware, poor training leads to a bad experience at whatever you do, and this includes election day. So in a way to enhance and improve elections throughout the county, We try to provide top-notch training, and that starts with a great learning environment. And as I mentioned, there's a connection with your organization and with the community, and as Jamie mentioned, individuals will come into your facility. It's great advertisement for whatever you have to show off at your facility. All right, so one last piece that I'm going to talk about today, before I turn it back over to Cristina, is we're going to talk about what you can do additionally to improve elections throughout LA County. Maybe you don't have any rooms that are available. You don't think the polling place would work because it's not available that day. You don't really have a room large enough for a training location, but you want to do something. You want to do anything you can to help promote democracy, to help promote elections throughout the county. The unit that I oversee, we provide a lot of resources and materials and partnering when people are interested in doing voter registration. So I'm going to run through that really quickly, and it'll give you some idea. And then if this is something you think you might be interested in, we can talk later on. You'll have my contact information. Okay, so most people are aware in order to vote, you have to be a U.S. citizen and you have to be 18 years of age or older by the next election date. So if you feel like you have people of either that category coming into your location, then you probably are a prime target to offer voter registration. All right. Okay, so there's a few ways you can actually register to vote. You can register online at our website, lavote.net, and one of the things we can provide is a button or a link that directs people to online voter registration. So if you feel like you want to advertise that and place that on your organization's website, we can provide you that resource. We can also provide you paper applications. Usually you find them at government buildings or schools, places like that, but you can have some as well. Organizations all the time partner with us on this. Cal Nonprofits is a big organization that we work with, and they have their own group of nonprofits that they oversee are very involved with voter registration. People want to re-register to vote just for some information here, and why would someone need to fill one out? So obviously there's the first time you want to register, but also if you change your name, you change your address, or you change your political party, you need to re-register. And this is it's great to offer these materials and maybe have a display in your lobby or whatnot, because people will come in and maybe they've moved and they realize they need to re-register to vote. People will, when they're out and about in the community, if they see an opportunity to register to vote or re-register, they'll take that opportunity. And then also one thing we like to do is promote it earlier rather than later, because you have to be registered 15 days prior to the election in order to be eligible to vote for that election. So for this upcoming election, it's May 23rd. That's a Monday. I believe it's May 23rd. I'm suddenly blanking on the date. But yeah, it's May 23rd. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay. All right. So how can we help you overall? We talked a little bit of background about voter registration. As I mentioned, we can provide you a link for online registration. If you want to be really involved, you feel strongly about voter registration, you want your staff to be knowledgeable, we can come down, we can train your staff and any volunteers you have. We can provide you voter registration cards, posters, etc. The picture on the bottom, we thought this was a great example. That's the Irwindale City Hall, and that's the city clerk there who put up a fantastic voter registration display. Those are a lot of examples of materials that we provided to them. Everything you see pictured there, besides the glass doors, we provided to them. So this is something, obviously you don't have to do something this elaborate, but even something like a simple box with voter registration forms and a poster, we can get that to you. But if you want something more extensive, we can do that as well. Also, if you feel like you want to be invested long-term in voter registration and you want to start tracking numbers, or maybe you want to get a competition going, we have a number of schools that compete against each other, high school students. They will all do voter registration, and then at the end of a certain period of time, we'll go ahead and look up how many voter registrations they did, and we can see who registered the most. It's a nice, fun competitive way that helps the community. And then we can also partner with you on community events. We can let you know about community events if you feel like there's something in your community you want to be involved with, or you can let us know and we'll come down and we're happy to set up a table. All right. So I see there's a question, which I'll answer, and I guess we're at the question now. Cristina, did you want me to address the question?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
All right, so the question is, what training do you need to do for voter registration? So the short answer is you actually don't need any training. If you want to come down and you want to check out some voter registration forms, or you want to request some and we can send them to you, you can go ahead and do that. We do recommend doing a training. It can be as short as a 30-minute training, or it could be a little lengthier if you want a little, some additional information included. And we provide that information. It really just goes over the form and explains how to fill out the form and some of the specifics around maybe some more uncommon situations you might encounter. You know, when looking at the form, it's name, address, date of birth, things like that, and everyone can, that's pretty straightforward. But there's some additional pieces of information. For example, if a homeless individual would like to register to vote, there's some information that's not familiar to everybody. There's also some best practices we offer and things like that. So if you are interested in setting up a voter registration training, you could go ahead and contact me. My contact information is at the end of this presentation, and we could set you up with a training and talk about that in more detail.
Great. So we do have a few more questions coming through. Back to polling places, the question is, are there guidelines in terms of how arts organizations can promote their own services or programs when voters are entering or exiting the polls?
Well, unfortunately, like most questions, it depends. There is no prohibition on you having flyers or pamphlets setting out in your facility, so long as they're not pertaining to anything that's on the ballot. So, for example, it couldn't say vote for Proposition C to save our theaters, or anything that pertains to what they're voting on. But if it's just we have this performance coming up on Friday, or the gallery open on this date, those would be fine. So again, it's best if you go ahead and contact us and let us know what you're looking to place out or to hand out or to talk about, and we can tell you where in relation to the polling room that could happen.
Great. And can you emphasize again, especially around nonprofits who want to do voter registration or do more work around getting out to vote, what are the legal parameters as a reminder for our organizations on the line?
Yeah, I can address that. So as long as you stick to nonpartisan activities, you're generally fine. I mean, technically, so I guess I'll answer this in two parts. As a polling place, as a facility, encouraging, trying to promote promote the election, we generally want everyone to maintain a nonpartisan manner. Remember, that's not promoting any political party, any candidate, any issue, anything like that. And that includes if you're doing, offering your facility as a training location. We wouldn't want the attendees coming to the training seeing posters promoting a certain candidate or whatnot or anything like that. So anything you do in direct connection with our office on an official level, it has to all be nonpartisan, especially the activities on election day. For registration, when our outreach staff, as the registrar, goes out to an event, we act in a complete, impartial, non-biased manner. We're just interested in registering anyone regardless of political party. However, there are organizations, and if your organization feels strongly about one candidate, you're endorsing a certain candidate or whatnot, and you want to offer voter registration at an event, the law is you cannot deny anyone a voter registration form. So let's say you're offering for a specific political party, just to kind of make it easy in this example, and someone comes up and they're not in favor of that political party, but they do want to register, you have to hand them a form. You don't have to collect that form from that person, but you can hand them a form. So that's what the law says. And we see that a lot out in the community when political parties are only registering individuals for their own party. They're collecting the forms for their political party and then sending those forms into our office. But anyone who's not of that political party, they're just handing them a form and letting them know to send it out on their own. Send it in on their own, excuse me. Did that answer the question?
Yes, and for another question, for organizations that are looking more towards the November election, what is the calendar for recruitment for polling places or poll worker training for that election?
Okay, so for the polling places, the sooner they can let us know, the better, because we do have to get out there and do surveys, and we need to start, well, let me give you a little bit more background. So we are constantly developing a pool of polling places. So you can always contact us and say that you're interested in becoming a polling place for future elections. For the November election, we start on that as soon as we finish recruitment for the June election, and that may even be before the June election. We start securing those locations and looking to what's going to go out there. So the sooner you can let us know, the better. The reality is you can tell us all the way up until the just before the election, and then in an emergency we might need to move a facility because there's a fire or a flood or something happens and a facility drops off. So we're always looking for facilities. Now, your best chances are when you call us early.
So for training locations, we've already recruited pretty much all the training locations. We actually are looking, I'll make a pitch now, if anyone is from Santa Monica and would like to help us out, we really need a location in Santa Monica. So for the June election, we started recruiting in January. There's still a few we're trying to finish off, but for the most part, we're getting close to being done. But if you feel like you have a facility and it is available in the month of May, just let us know and we can at least make a note of it, even if that may not work. But for the November election, we'll start recruiting in July. So again, if you have a facility and it's available from this point forward, or you have a room, you feel like you could find a time at some point that we can schedule it, then please call us and let us know.
Great. And another question, if there is a polling place location within a neighborhood that an arts organization might be connected to, are there ways that they can know about those locations in advance and potentially partner? Have you seen good models of partnership between organizations who want to support polling place locations but may not be a polling place location themselves?
So to volunteer to serve in another location as a poll worker?
To serve or to support that polling station and being more effective?
I'm not entirely clear on what that question is. So if it's to support the polling place by, serving as a poll worker on the board, then give us a call and we will do our best to place you on boards that you're interested in serving on. We're always looking for poll workers. Poll worker recruitment is a difficult job, and we're constantly in need. There are more challenging areas. Just like there's some areas it's hard to find a polling place, there are some areas that are difficult to find poll workers. So the more flexible people can be in where they're placed, the better off they are and the higher their chances. Does that answer the question?
I think the question is looking kind of specifically at specific ethnic communities and ways that voter registration groups can help support. I think this is more around the voter registration issue, certain specific ethnic communities and ways that organizations could support that initiative.
Yeah, so for voter registration and specific communities, so data shows us that certain ethnic and racial communities have historically lower turnout than other communities. So we serve all voters of LA County. We provide voter registration. We'll go to, Malibu, the Palisades. We'll go to the South LA, Lancaster, Pomona, wherever. We do tend to focus our efforts a little bit more because of our limited resources on areas that are historically more in need. So these are areas that have historically low turnout. And a lot of areas, for example, San Gabriel Valley might be one and has a much higher Asian population and so forth. So there's, in every supervisor district, which we also try to be aware of because we serve LA County and the supervisors are, the officials that represent all of LA County, we try to staff events and outreach to members of all those communities. However, like I said, there's a little bit of more of a focus, and we use data to really identify where that focus is. And we have a lot of materials that we can translate, that we can provide additional best practices and outreach strategies for working within those communities. A lot of those outreach strategies and best practices come from our partnering organizations that work specifically with those individual audiences. So organizations like Asian Americans Advancing Justice, organizations like NALEO, which is the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, and so forth. So when we are looking at strategies to really tackle the historically low turnout that some of these communities face, those are some of the resources we rely on, and we'd love to connect any organizations interested in working with those organizations or interested in learning some additional best practices. Happy to have that conversation at a later date.
Great, and this may be a question for Jamie or for Jeff. Once the location has been reviewed, what's generally the timeline for that location being informed that they will in fact become a polling place?
It's usually a pretty short timeline. That once we've determined that you're compliant, we check to see if we need something in that area and can get back to you within a couple of days typically. But while I have the microphone, I also wanted to touch on something that's important for everybody to know, that LA County is working on a new voting system. And that voting system uses a slightly different model than our current polling place structure, that instead of going to a polling place that is near you only on election day, it opens up the concept of vote centers. And this, again, is when the new voting system comes into play, but we'll be looking for larger facilities that can be open over several days to offer voting to voters anywhere in the county. So if you have a large facility, we're definitely interested in talking to you, even if you're not available at this time, into seeing what we can do for future elections.
So if I could just add something, can I just add on to that really quick? Because the vote center model is a very important focus for our department, and we're looking at 2018 or 2020 to be rolling that out. And just to add on to what Jamie said, the idea is that we want to go to where the population is, where people are already going to be going. So we know that they might go to a museum on the weekend, and that's where we want to be, because that way people, when they're out checking out an art exhibit, they can also have an opportunity to vote as well. So just wanted to add that in to kind of round out that picture.
Great, and kind of our last question, we'll still continue to collect questions from all of the attendees here, so feel free to continue to send in your questions. But in terms of the importance of such an interesting system to partner with organizations, you're a government agency, so can you elaborate again on the importance of partnering with organizations around civic participation and the role that everyone can play in that process?
And if I can start off on that one with polling places, the county doesn't own polling places. They have to come from the community. So when we're looking to conduct an election, we literally need 4,621 organizations out there, whether they be other governmental agencies like school districts or religious institutions like churches, to partner with us to make that possible. And then our poll workers, again, are members of the community. We need over 20,000 people that need to come together and partner with us. And those come from different community groups. They come from people who are interested. They come from, other districts. So the city may offer up staff, or the county, different departments will offer staff. So really the election is a partnership, and it would not work without other groups coming together to assist us in that process.
Yeah, and then from just a civic engagement perspective, so we know how big LA County is. Our outreach staff is 4 permanent people, including me. For elections, we hire some additional temp employees, so we have an additional 2 on right now. We're going to get another 2. So it's really not a huge staff considering the size of LA County. And this is why the partnership model is so important. There's no way we could reach enough voters. We already don't reach enough of voters, but we're always trying to. That's why we're always looking to partner with organizations, because the more organizations we can partner with, the more information we can get out to the community, the more voters that can be registered, the more voters can be informed about Election Day. And then also on Election Day, we receive feedback from organizations. We have something called a poll monitor hotline, which I won't go into too much detail, but the main point is that we rely on partners to let us know, hey, we're at this polling place and they need a Spanish speaker over here, or they need someone who speaks Chinese over here, or I think the inspector is not familiar with one of the policies, or I have a question about electioneering. Whatever the case is, we receive feedback from our partners on Election Day as well. So there's a lot of back and forth that goes on, and a lot of mutual beneficial relationships, not just for our own department, but really for all of the voters of LA County.
Great. I want to thank you both so much, and if we have additional questions that come in, I'll make sure to address them. But thank you for these insights and for helping us understand the role that we can play. I just want to highlight here that as we are looking at what's coming down, what's coming ahead of us here, that Arts for LA is continuing to do arts and culture candidate surveys. Our next round of surveys for local elections in LA County for the April 12th election, those surveys will be available on March 18th later this week at our website, artsforla.org. We'll also be tracking the presidential primary elections and the ballot initiatives for the June 7th election and the LA County Board of Supervisors. As I mentioned earlier, we also are going to be doing supervisor candidate forums later in April, early in May for the 4th and 5th supervisorial district seats that are available. And we'll also be looking towards the November 8th election. You'll see on this screen as well, again, the polling place application deadlines for the primary election, March 31st, the end of this month, and for the general election in November, July 15th. So, and I know that as you've all mentioned, the earlier the better. So I know that there's some validity with these deadlines, but encouraging organizations that want to be involved to get involved early, get the process started. I'll leave here our contact information for everyone who's been on the call, and I know these are direct contact information. Is there anything you guys would like to highlight about who to get in touch with and how?
No, just as you see there, depending on what you're interested in, all of our contact info. So, for example, myself, Jeff Klein, if you're interested in voter outreach and education related information, Jamie or Harnell for polling place and poll worker recruitment, and if you're interested in poll worker training locations, although she didn't speak, Elizabeth Bejarano is the person there who would oversee that service, and then someone named Cristina Pacheco at Arts for LA. We all know her, so you can all contact her.
Great. And if anyone does move forward in the training site or polling place process, Arts for LA would love to know about that. Please do let us know if you get involved with that so that we can track, and we'll be working with the county registrar on this, and especially around those hard to recruit areas. And so if you have those contacts for any of this, or if you feel that there's someone we should outreach to that you're on the line today, please let us know. We want to be in communication. We want to make our ArtsVote power known across the county. I do want to make sure to recognize Charles Flowers, our Deputy Director, who's on the line, and Sophia Klasker, our Executive Director, and the entire Arts for LA team here who are working for ArtsVote and on our other initiatives as well. We'll continue to communicate all of the available opportunities around the candidate surveys, the forums, and this webinar will be archived on our website and available to be shared with anyone who wasn't able to join us today. So is there anything else you'd like to leave us with, Jeff or Jamie, before we sign off today?
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing from many of you to sign up to be polling places, and hopefully, even if you can't serve as a poll worker for this election, certainly for future elections, we've also attached the poll worker application to this presentation. You feel free to download that and send them in.
Great. I just want to thank you again, Jamie and Jeff, for all of your expertise and for sharing your knowledge with us today and for the great work that you do for our county. So thank you both so much. And thank you all for attending. Again, this will be archived online, and we are happy to answer any questions that you have. Hope everyone has a great day today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.